This is Howl by Allen Ginsberg. I hope I don't fuck this up. I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness, starving, hysterical, naked, dragging themselves through the Negro streets at dawn looking for an angry fix. Angel-headed hipsters burning for the ancient heavenly connection to the starry dynamo in the machinery of night, whose poverty and tatters and hollowed-eyed, hand-high, sat up smoking in the supernatural darkness of cold water flats, floating across the tops of cities contemplating jazz, who bared their brains to heaven and under the L and saw Mohammedan angels staggering under tenement roofs illuminated, who passed through universities with radiant eyes and hallucinating Arkansas and Blake-like tragedies amongst the scholars of war, who were expelled from the academies for crazy and publishing obscene odes in the windows of the skull, who cowered in unshaven rooms in underwear, burning their money in wastebaskets and listening to the terror through the wall, who got busted in their public beards returning through Laredo with a belt of marijuana for New York, who ate fire in paint hotels and who drank turpentine in Paradise Alley. Death, or purgated their torsos night after night with dreams, with drugs, with waking nightmares, with alcohol and cock and endless balls. Incomparable blind streets and shuttered clouds and light, with the mind leaping towards the poles of Canada and Patterson, illuminating all the motionless world of time between. Peyote solidities of halls, backyard green tree cemetery dawns, wine drunkenness over the rooftops, storefront burrows of tea-head joyride neon blinking traffic light, sun and moon and tree vibrations in the roaring winter dusks of Brooklyn, ashcan rantings and kind king light of mind, who chained themselves to subways for endless rides from the Battery to the Holy Bronx on Benzedrine until the noise of wheels and children brought them down shuddering, mouth-racked and battered, bleak of brain, all drained of brilliance in the dreary light of Zoo, who sank all night in the submarine light of Bickford's, floated out and sat in the stale beer afternoon in desolate fugazis, listening to the crack of doom on hydrogen jukeboxes, who talked continuously for 70 hours from Park Road to bar to Bellevue to museum to Brooklyn Bridge, a lost battalion of platonic conversationalists jumping down the stoops of fire escapes, off windowsills, off Empire States, out of the moon, yakety yak yak yak, screaming, vomiting, whispering facts and memories and anecdotes and eyeball kicks and shocks of hospitals and jails and wars, whole intellects disgorged in total recall for 7 days and nights, with brilliant eyes meet for synagogue cast on the pavement, who vanished into nowhere Zen, New Jersey, leaving a trail of ambiguous picture postcards of Atlantic City Hall, suffering eastern sweats and Tangerian bone grindings and migraines of China under junk withdrawal in Newark's bleak furnished rooms, who wandered round and around at midnight in the railway yard wondering where to go and went, leaving no broken hearts, who let cigarettes in boxcars, racketing through the snow towards little lonesome farms on a grandfather night, who studied Polonius, Poe, St. John of the Cross, telepathy, Bob Kabbalah because the universe instinctively vibrated at their feet in Kansas, who loaned it through the streets of Idaho seeking visionary Indian angels and who were visionary Indian angels, who thought they were only mad when Baltimore gleamed in supernatural ecstasy, who jumped in limousines with Chinamen of Oklahoma on the impulse of winter midnight, street light, small town rain, who lounged hungry and lonesome through Houston seeking jazz or sex or soup, and followed the brilliant Spaniard to converse about America and eternity, a hopeless task, and so took ship to Africa, who disappeared into the volcanoes of Mexico, leaving nothing behind but the shadows of dungarees and the larva and the ash of poetry scattered in the fireplace Chicago, who reappeared on the West Coast investigating the FBI in beards and shorts and with big pacifist eyes, sexy in the dark skin, passing out incomprehensible leaflets, who burned cigarette holes in their arms, protesting the narcotic tobacco haze of capitalism, who distributed super communist pamphlets in Union Square, weeping and undressing while the sirens of Los Alamos wailed down the wall, and the Staten Island ferry also wailed, who broke down crying in white gymnasiums, naked and trembling before the machinery of other skeletons, and who bit detectives in the neck and shrieked with delight in police cars for committing no crime but their own wild, cooking pederastian intoxication, who howled on their knees in the subway and were dragged off the roofs waving genitalia and manuscripts, who let themselves be fucked in the ass by saintly motorcyclists and screamed with joy, who blew and were blown by those human seraphim, the sailors, caresses of Atlantic and Caribbean love, who bawled in the morning, in the evenings, in rose gardens, and in grass of public parks, and cemeteries, scattering their semen freely to whomever come who may, who hiccuped endlessly trying to giggle but wound up with a sob between the partition and the Turkish bath when the blonde and naked angel came to pierce them with a sword, who lost their love boys to 3 old shrews of fate, the one-eyed shrew of the heterosexual dollar, the one-eyed shrew who winks out of the womb, and the one-eyed shrew that does nothing but sit on her ass and snip the golden intellectual thread of craftsman's looms, and copulated ecstatic and insatiate and fell off the bed and continued along the floor, down the hall, and ended up fainting on the wall with a vision of ultimate cunt and came eluding the last jism of consciousness, who sweetened the snatches of a million girls trembling in the streets and were red-eyed in the morning but were prepared to sweeten the snatch of the sunrise, flashing buttocks into the barns and naked in the lake, who went out whoring through Colorado a myriad of stolen car nights. Neil Cassidy, secret hero of these poems, coxman and Adonis of Denver, joy to the memory of his innumerable lays of girls in empty lots and diners' backyards, movie houses, rickety rows on mountain tops in caves, or on gaunt waitresses in familiar roadside lonely petticoat upliftings, and especially secret gas station solipsisms of John's and hometown alleys too. Faded out in vast soaring movies, who were shifted in reams, woke in sudden Manhattan and picked themselves up out of basements hung over with heartless Tokay and horrors of Third Avenue iron dreams and stumbled to unemployment, who walked all night with their shoes full of blood on the snowbank docks waiting for the door in the East River to open full of steam, heat, and opium, who created great suicidal dramas in the apartment cliff banks of the Hudson under the wartime blue floodlights of the moon, and their heads shall be crowned with laurels in oblivion, who ate lamb stew of imagination or digested the crab at the muddy bottom of the river of the Bowery, who wept at the romance of the streets with their pushcars full of onions and bad music, who sat in boxes breathing in the darkness under the bridge, and rose up to build harpsichords in their lofts, who coughed from the 6th floor of Harlem crowned with flame under the tubercular sky surrounded by orange carts of theology, who scribbled all night and rolling over lofty incantations with their yellow mourning were stanzas of gibberish, who cooked rotten animals, lung, heart, feet, tail, borscht, and tortillas, dreaming of pure vegetable kingdom, who plunged themselves under meat trucks looking for an egg, who threw their watches off the roof, cast their ballots from eternity outside of space and time, and alarm clocks fell on their heads every day for the next decade, who cut their wrists 3 times successively, unsuccessfully, gave up and were forced to open antique stores where they thought they were growing old and cried, who were burned alive in the innocent flannel shirts of Madison Avenue amid blasts of leaden verse and tanked-up clatter of iron regiments of fashion, and the nitroglycerin shrieks of the fairies of advertising, and the mustard gas of sinister intelligent editors, or run down by drunken taxicabs of absolute reality, who jumped off Brooklyn Bridge, this actually happened, and walked away unknown and forgotten into the ghostly days of Chinatown soup and alleyways and fire trucks, not even one free beer, who sang out the windows in their despair, fell out of the subway window, jumped on the filthy Passaic, leapt on the Negroes, cried all over the street, danced on broken wine glasses, barefoot, smashed phonograph records of nostalgic European 1930s German jazz, finished the whiskey and threw up groaning in the bloody toilet, moans in their ears and the blast of colossal steam whistles, who barreled down the highway of the past, journeying into each other's hot rod Golgotha jail solitude, watching Birmingham jazz incantations, who drove cross-country 72 hours to find out if I had a vision, or if you had a vision, or if he had a vision, and to find eternity, who journeyed to Denver, who died in Denver, who came back to Denver and waited in vain, who watched over Denver and brooded and loaned in Denver, who finally went away to find the time, and now Denver is lonesome for her heroes, who fell on their knees in hopeless cathedrals, praying for each other's salvation and light and breasts until the soul illuminated its hair for a second, who crashed through their minds in jails, waiting for the impossible criminals with golden heads and the charm of reality in their hearts, who sang sweet blues to Alcatraz, who retired to Mexico to cultivate a habit, or to Rocky Mountains to tend Buddha, or to Tangiers to boys, or to South Pacific to the Black Locomotive, or to Harvard to Narcissus, to Woodlawn to the Daisy Chain or the grave, who demanded saintly trials accusing the radio of hypnotism and were left in their insanity, in their hands in a hung jury, who threw potato salad at CCNY lecturer Dadaism and subsequently presented themselves on the granite steps of the madhouse with shaven beards and harlequin speech of suicide demanding instantaneous lobotomy, and who were given the concrete void of insulin, metrazole, electricity, hydrotherapy, psychotherapy, occupational therapy, ping-pong, and amnesia, who in humorless protest overturned only one symbolic ping-pong table, resting briefly in catatonia, returning years later truly bald except for a wig of blood and tears and fingers to the visible madmen doom of the wards and mad towns of the East. Pilgrim State, Rockland, and Greystone's footed halls, bickering with the echoes of the soul, rocking and rolling in the midnight solitude, benched David realms of love, dream, and fire of nightmares, bodies turned to stone as heavy as the moon, with mother finally fucked, and the last fantastic look flung out the tenement window, and the last door closed at 4 a.m., and the last telephone slammed on the wall and replied, and the last furnished emptied down to the last piece of mental furniture, a yellow paper rose twisted on a wire hanger in the closet, and even that imaginary, nothing but a hopeful little bit of hallucination. Carl. While you are not safe, I am not safe. And now you are really in the total animal soup of time. And who, therefore, ran through the icy streets obsessed with the sudden flash of the alchemy of the use of the ellipse, the catalogue, the meter, and the vibrating plane, who dreamt and made incarnate gaps in time and space through images juxtaposed and trapped in the archangel of the soul, 2 visible images, and joined the elemental verbs and sat the noun and dash of consciousness together with the sensation of patra omnotus etra deos, to recreate the syntax and measure for human prose and stand before you speechless and intelligent, and shaking with shame, rejected yet confessing out the soul to conform to the rhythm of thought in his naked and endless head. The madman bum and angel beat in time, unknown yet putting down what is left to say in the time come after death, and rose incarnate in the ghostly close of jazz and the gold horn shadow of the band, and blew the suffering of America's naked mind for love into Eli, Eli, Lama, Lama, Sabachthani saxophone cry that shivered the cities down to the last radio, with an absolute heart of the poem butchered out of their own bodies and good to eat for 1,000 years. What sphinx of cement and aluminum bashed open the skulls and ate their brains and imaginations? Moloch, solitude, filth, ugliness, ash cans and unattainable dollars, children screaming under the stairwells, boys sobbing in armies, old men weeping in the parks. Moloch, Moloch, nightmare of Moloch, Moloch the loveless, mental Moloch, Moloch the heavy judger of men, Moloch the incomprehensible prison, Moloch the crossbone soulless jailhouse and congress of sorrow, Moloch whose buildings are judgment, Moloch the vast stone of war, Moloch of the stunned governments, Moloch whose mind is pure machinery, Moloch whose blood is running money, Moloch whose fingers are 10 armies, Moloch whose breast is a cannibal dynamo, Moloch whose ear is a smoking tomb, Moloch whose eyes are 1,000 blind windows, Moloch whose skyscrapers stand in long streets like endless Jehovahs, Moloch whose factories dream and choke in the fog, Moloch whose smokestacks and antennae crown the cities, Moloch whose love is endless in stone, Moloch whose soul is electricity and banks, Moloch whose poverty is the specter of genius, Moloch whose fate is a cloud of a sexless hydrogen, Moloch whose name is the mind, Moloch in whom I send lonely, Moloch in whom I dream angels, crazy in Moloch, cocksucker in Moloch, lack love and manless in Moloch, Moloch who entered my soul early, Moloch in whom I am consciousness without a body, Moloch who frightened me out of my natural ecstasy, Moloch whom I abandon. Wake up in Moloch, light streaming out of the sky, Moloch, Moloch, robot apartments, invisible suburbs, skeleton treasuries, blind capitals, demonic industries, spectral nations, invisible madhouses, granite cocks, monstrous bombs, they broke their backs, they came Moloch to heaven, pavements, trees, radios, tons, lifting the city, cry to heaven, which exists and is everywhere about us, visions, omens, hallucinations, miracles, ecstasies, gone down the American river, dreams, adorations, illuminations, religions, and a whole boatload of sensitive bullshit. Breakthroughs over the time, flips and crucifixions down the flood, highs, epiphanies, despairs, 10 years, animal screams and suicides, minds, new loves, mad generation, down on the rocks of time, real holy laughter in the river. They saw it all, the wild eyes, the holy yells, they bade farewell, they jumped off the roof to solitude, waving, carrying flowers down the river into the street. Carl Solomon, I'm with you in Rockland, where you're madder than I am. I'm with you in Rockland, where you must feel strange. I'm with you in Rockland, where you imitate the shade of my mother. I'm with you in Rockland, where you've murdered your 12 secretaries. I'm with you in Rockland, where you laugh at this invisible humor. I'm with you in Rockland, where we are great writers on the same dreadful typewriter. I'm with you in Rockland, where your condition has become serious and is reported on the radio. I'm with you in Rockland, where the faculties of the skull no longer admit the worms of the senses. I'm with you in Rockland, where you drink tea at the breasts of the spinsters of Utica. I'm with you in Rockland, where you pun on the bodies of your nurses and harpies of the Bronx. I'm with you in Rockland, where you scream in a straitjacket that you're losing the game of actual ping-pong of the abyss. I'm with you in Rockland, where you bang on the catatonic piano of the soul is innocent and immortal, it should never die, ungodly in an armed madhouse. I'm with you in Rockland, where 50 more shocks will never return your soul to its body again from its pilgrimage to cross in the void. I'm with you in Rockland, where you accuse your doctors of insanity and plot the Hebrew socialist revolution against the fascist national Golgotha. I'm with you in Rockland, where you split the heavens of Long Island and resurrect the living human Jesus from the superhuman tomb. I'm with you in Rockland, where 25,000 mad comrades all sing together the final stanzas of the Internationale. I'm with you in Rockland, where we hug and kiss the United States under our bedsheets, the United States that coughs all night and won't let us sleep. I'm with you in Rockland, where we wake up electrified out of the coma of our own souls, airplanes roaring over the roofs. They've come to drop angelic bombs. The hospital illuminates itself. Imaginary walls collapse. Oh, skinny legions run outside. Oh, star-spangled shock of mercy. The eternal war is here. Oh, victory, forget your underwear. We're free. I'm with you in Rockland in my dreams. You walk dripping from the sea journey on the highway across America in tears to the door of my cottage in the western night.